Being a woman in this patriarchal society has affected me and my relationship with money in every single way all throughout my life. Hey everyone, it's your girl Rose, and today I want to talk about a very important topic: women and money. I wanted to make this video because I think that many of you will be able to relate to my experiences, and so I'm putting myself out there in the hopes that it will make you feel heard and less alone. If you've ever felt marginalized because of your gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, and felt like it influenced your finances somehow, I feel you. This video is not to complain, and it's not to make anyone wrong. It's just to get really specific and share about the insidious forces that hold women back financially based on my real lived experiences. I've got a lot to say around the topic of money and being a woman in a patriarchal society, so grab a cup of tea and let's have some real talk. To give you some background info, my family and I moved from Korea to the US when my sister and I were 2, and I didn't even fully learn English until I was about 5. So I very much grew up in a sheltered Korean-American immigrant household. And whether it was in school or on the playground, I just always felt like an outsider because I was different. I would even go to Korean school on Sundays and I felt like an outsider there because my Korean wasn't as good as the other Korean kids. So wherever I went, and then at school, some kids would look at me and say, "Ching chong chang," just kids being kids. And they'd also make fun of my home-cooked lunches that my mom packed for me because it had Korean food and it smelled different. So ever since I can remember, I always felt like an outsider. And it just translated to this feeling like something was wrong with me. And this feeling stayed with me well into my adult life, and it only got worse later on when I entered the working world, because now not only am I different ethnicity-wise, but at my first job on Wall Street, I was the only female trader on an entire trading floor. And so when you don't look the way everyone else looks, or you're somehow just different from everyone else, the subtle message that gave to me was, you don't belong here. So these feelings of shame and feeling like an outsider were things that were deeply ingrained in my psyche, and I didn't even realize it. And it's not until pretty recently I was able to start naming this feeling and start questioning it. That is the great thing about therapy, meditation, and all the things we can do to heal and understand ourselves better. So through all that, I realized that nothing is actually wrong with me, and nothing is wrong with you either. It's often culture and society at large and a lack of self-awareness that is the problem. I want to make this point very clear. Being a woman in this patriarchal society has affected me and my relationship with money in every single way all throughout my life. I'm gonna share some stories with you in a minute, but before I do that, let's first talk about the term microaggressions. Okay, so a microaggression is any verbal or non-verbal behavior that communicates negative, hostile, or derogatory messages to people about their gender, race, ethnicity, or sexuality, some trait that's inherent to them. They also tend to be subtle, indirect, and unintentional, hence the term microaggression. But the fact is, microaggressions happen all the time, all around us. For example, maybe a company that you want to work for, their HR person tells you, gender plays no part in who we hire. Yet, you know at that company that there's practically no women in senior positions there. So the subtle message behind this is that women have a level playing field. So if women don't rise up the ranks, it must be their fault. Again, very subtle, but this is a microaggression. Or here's another example. Every time you try to speak at a work meeting, you get interrupted by a male colleague, and no one else says anything when this happens. After a while, you stop trying to talk because you don't want to get interrupted. So the not so subtle message behind that is that your input isn't valued. That's why that Kamala Harris man-interruption moment during the election debates last year became such a viral thing on social media. If you know, you know. Also, any type of sexist joke or comment, that is a microaggression. Another example, mansplaining. Meaning a guy starts explaining something to you, even though you didn't even ask him to explain it. And it's actually a topic that you know more than him about. So the message behind mansplaining is that you automatically must be dumber or more ignorant than him, and it's really not a great feeling. These are all examples of sexist microaggressions, and when it happens, it can feel like you've been gut punched, even if nobody actually punched you. Microaggressions are subtle and often totally unintentional on the part of the microaggressor. They sometimes are even trying to help you or say something as a compliment, but they just don't come off right. So microaggressions are subtle, but still really hurtful. If you're still not sure what a microaggression is, honestly, just look through my YouTube comments. Being one of the few women on YouTube who talk about money and investing, they are a gold mine of subtle and sometimes not so subtle sexist microaggressions. For example, mansplaining happens to me all the time on my own YouTube channel, in my own comments. I know, it's incredible. And often I don't think it's purposeful on whoever does it, but it happens. Or one time when I changed my hair color and I started posting videos with me in pink hair, one guy said, "It's hard to take you seriously now that you have pink hair." Whoever said that, you are more than welcome to quietly unsubscribe and stop watching my videos if you don't like my pink hair. But unsolicited critiques about my appearance, that is definitely a sexist microaggression. I also get a decent amount of creepy comments about how nice my breasts look, which is a perfect example of the tendency to look at women as sex objects. Maybe they were meant as compliments, but they're really not. The sexual objectification of women is just one huge cultural, never-ending microaggression. Before 2020, I'd actually never heard of the word microaggression, but after the whole Me Too movement and George Floyd and everything going on with Asian American hate these days, I'm finally learning some concepts and vocabulary to give voice to feelings that I'd always had but hadn't had the words for. So before, anytime somebody made a vaguely sexist or racist comment that left me feeling like crap, I would just keep quiet about it because I just didn't know how to articulate what happened. And often I would just think it was because something was wrong with me. But now that I understand the concept of microaggressions, I am finally able to look at my life from a bird's eye view and recognize the level of prejudice and internal struggle that I've had to overcome just to get to where I am today. And I know a lot of you can relate, so this is my story. So it all started as a teenager and in my early 20s. My finances were a hot mess back then, and I spent everything I made trying to just fit in and buy stuff to feel better about myself. So we live in a culture that objectifies women and constantly bombards us with images in the media of women looking impossibly perfect and airbrushed and skinny. So a lot of my self-worth was tied up in my looks, body image. So there was a lot of shame wrapped up in that, and that negativity totally carried over to my finances. I was too scared to even look at my student loans, and even though I knew that I spent a little too much on frivolous things, I just couldn't help myself. So it was this vicious cycle. In a study across 300 women's magazine articles, 65% of articles defined women as excessive spenders and advises them to limit shopping splurges. In another study, in 600 of the most popular photographs about finance used on the internet, women were frequently depicted as childlike compared to men. For example, holding a cute piggy bank. And that's if they were even featured at all. Also, did you know that before the Equal Opportunity Act of 1974, women were literally not allowed to take out loans without their husband's permission? And if you were married, single, you just couldn't get loans, period. That's credit cards to start a business, nothing. Now, 1974 is not that long ago. Some of you watching were even born into times like that. Add to this everything we see in pop culture. Just think about Sex and the City, which by the way is my favorite show of all time. I love it. But Carrie Bradshaw's adorable addiction to shoes and that one episode where she couldn't buy a house because of all the $400 high heels and Manolo Blahniks that she spent her money on. Not okay. Not a good message to be sending girls. Or what about that movie, Confessions of a Shopaholic, where the main character is so deep in credit card debt because of her shopping addiction, and then at the end, she essentially gets saved by a Prince Charming. Such a bad storyline. So even in today's day and age, the media still sends the message that girls should be cute and sexy, but not powerful, respected, and financially independent. The values are just warped. And this is so harmful because as a woman, especially as a young girl, you can't help but absorb some of these negative messages, and they do influence the way you feel about yourself and your ability to be good with money. When I posted my first video showing my new pink hair color, I got a couple of snarky comments from guys who had issues with how much I probably spent on my hair. If you must know, yeah, I spent almost $700 getting this hair color, and it was worth every penny. I have also put away well over $50,000 into my investment accounts, and it's only May of 2021. I've still got 7 months to go. I'm debt-free, and I budgeted months in advance for this hair appointment. There are so many sexist assumptions wrapped up in a comment like that, I would not even know where to begin. So ladies, do not let anyone give you patronizing advice about your finances. You are more than capable of being good with money. You just need to be shown how, by someone who won't give you patronizing advice and by someone who isn't gonna talk down to you like you're a child. I remember one time I was with my ex-husband visiting his relatives in LA, you know, this is when we were still together, and one of his distant cousins, second, third cousin or something like that, came up to me and he started chatting me up about all the investing stuff that I was posting about online on YouTube and social media. And then he goes, "Oh, must be nice to be married because now you've got stocks and you've got all this money." We were at a dinner and I was so shocked by what he said that I literally forgot how to speak. Now, he comes from a Middle Eastern culture where women very much are financially dependent on men, and back in his country, they don't have as many rights and so on and so forth. So while I can understand that is genuinely the culture that he comes from and he really didn't mean any harm by that, it still sucks to be on the receiving end of a comment like that. One of my best friends, she is a badass woman in tech who is absolutely killing it as a senior manager at a high-profile data analytics company. So tech is another very male-dominated field. And I can't tell you how many times she's gotten comments like, "Oh, you got the job because you're a girl," or "It's because you're a cute Asian girl." Whenever she gets featured in the news or gets picked over someone else for a really great position, like those are the kinds of comments that she gets. When someone dismisses your achievements to anything other than your own effort and your own hard work, it really does not feel great. Like, hello, did you not notice how much I busted ass to get here? So offhand comments like that can seriously make you feel so small, and if you're not self-aware, you might end up playing small and not shining as brightly as you could. So it's really important to recognize that when it happens and to not internalize that as a reason for you to start playing small. All right, and then if you zoom it out on a macro level, you see the lack of female CEOs, the lack of female politicians and presidents, unpaid maternity leave, and even subtle things like the fact that there are no women on our dollar bills. All of this equates to a lack of recognition of the talents and contributions of women on a macro level. So there are some very real and insidious reasons why the pay gap between men and women still exists in 2021. Sometimes I wonder why it was so hard to get out of debt and change my inner money story to something more positive, and even just to start this YouTube channel. If you see any woman who has attained any measure of financial success, you better believe that she's had to overcome a ton of biases and deal with so much shit to get there. Most of it psychological and not visible to the eye. All right, and then there's all the confusion around gender roles. When I first got married, my ex had all these well-meaning business associates who wanted to congratulate us and send us wedding gifts. And you wanna know what one of their wives sent me? She did not know who I was, she's never met me, and she sent me a recipe book. Yeah, I mean, totally well-meaning, harmless gift from a nice lady, but the implicit message in that is you belong in the home, taking care of your husband. No thanks, not about that. To tie this back to the issue of money, in the US, women spend 37% more time on unpaid care than men, according to Oxfam America. The fact that women do so much more of the housework, childcare, and other unpaid domestic labor than men is a huge contributor to financial inequality. But it really doesn't have to be that way. It's 2021, right? Let's let go of outdated notions of gender roles and make sure that you and your partner are both doing your fair share of any unpaid domestic labor. Honestly, gender roles are still very confusing for me because I grew up seeing my grandmothers, aunts, and for many years, my own mother doing nothing but caretaking, cooking, and just cleaning up after everyone. So even though that's not what I want for myself, I still feel strangely obligated, like feelings of guilt if I don't want to do those things. And I don't have kids right now, but I'm pretty sure I'll be having these kinds of mommy guilt feelings if and when I do have kids. So this confusion around gender roles is definitely something I have to work on. That being said, I would love for a man to cook and take care of the house for me. So just putting it out there, any men out there who love to cook, I am single now. Just think about the cumulative effect of all of these microaggressions and unhealthy messages on every single woman in society from the moment she's born all the way through childhood until now. And the thing about these small biases and prejudices, even though they're small individually, over many, many years, over many, many repetitions, they really compound into like huge financial disparities. Just like the way compound interest works, where a small amount of money invested grows into something much bigger over time, just being paid $1 less than your equally qualified male colleague, or just having a little less recognition than someone else because you're a woman, the effects of these compounds into really large disparities over time. That is why in 2021, women earn only 79 cents on the dollar compared to men, and that hasn't changed since 1995. That is why in 2021, women only own 32 cents on the dollar compared to men. And if you're a woman of color, you own less than 1 penny on the dollar compared to men in terms of assets. So If you're looking at the wealth gap, that's even bigger than the income gap. That is why in 2021, mothers on average are paid 71 cents to every dollar paid to fathers. That is why in 2021, less than 5% of all venture capital investment went to women-led companies. That is why in 2021, there are 4 male CEOs named James, Robert, John, or William for every 1 female CEO. And the ratios are similar for senators and Supreme Court justices. In other words, there are more Johns, Williams, Roberts, and James in positions of power than there are women as a whole. All right. You might be wondering why I sound like a social activist right now, even though I am just a financial YouTuber, but when talking about money, I found that it's impossible to not also address the disparities across social divides because they are so pronounced. So now let's talk about what we can do about it, because I don't want to just talk about what's wrong with the world. I want to do something about it. First of all, I want you to let go of self-judgment. Even if your finances are a hot mess right now, it does not mean something is wrong with you. It's not that you're bad with money or that you're stupid or whatever. It's just that we live in a world with deeply embedded gender biases and expectations, so the odds are stacked against you. Combine that with the fact that they don't teach us anything about money in school. I mean, be nice to yourself. If we're gonna start changing the narratives that society has around women and money, we need to first start changing it within ourselves. So I'm gonna leave you with these 6 tips. First, let's recognize the real challenges we face as women and stop blaming yourself for them. Stop buying into the belief that we are falling short in some way. Only then can you start speaking up, choosing more empowering beliefs about money, and start improving your finances. It's really 100% an inside job. Secondly, learn how to spot a microaggression when it occurs. Try to really understand the concept of microaggressions. That way you can recognize a sexist microaggression when it happens and not take it personally. It is so important to be self-aware enough to not internalize whatever negative message was behind that microaggression, because usually whoever said it genuinely didn't know any better. So some compassion towards them and towards yourself goes a long way. Thirdly, be very intentional about where you choose to work. Before taking a job at a company, make sure they have a progressive, positive culture that supports and uplifts women and people of all backgrounds, for that matter. Ask them about pay gaps in your interviews. This speaks volumes about the culture and what's really a priority for them versus just PR and lip service. Companies need your skills and contributions, so the more you hold companies accountable as the people that they need to hire, the more corporate culture in America will evolve and catch up with the times. Fourthly, consume mass media and education with a critical eye. Do not put up with patronizing advice, and train yourself to notice when an ad or a TV show is objectifying women or perpetuating some sort of unhealthy gender bias in some way. Our brains are always absorbing messages subconsciously 24/7, so you want to be really intentional about what you allow into your orbit. Fifth, vote. There is a reason why we still don't have basic necessities in this country like paid maternity leave. You know how many other countries in Europe have that already? When women aren't even present in the rooms where our country's laws are being made, obviously our needs aren't going to be addressed. Currently, the percentage of women in Congress is at an all-time high of 25%, but that is still way short of 50-50 representation. So vote because it matters. All right, and last but not least, the most important thing you can do is to become wildly successful and unapologetically ambitious yourself. That way you can become a model of possibility for other women. That was my main motivation for starting this YouTube channel in the first place, because you can't be what you can't see. The more women we have who are crushing it in 2021 and being total financially independent badasses, the more women we can lift up along the way and start changing all the gender biases that are just so deeply embedded in our world today. So share this video with your girlfriends, and for any men watching, please share this video with the women in your life. Also, by no means am I saying that men have it easy. Men do not have it easy either. There's a lot of toxicity in our culture around men never showing any emotion because it's perceived as weakness, which is ridiculous. So male or female, nobody has it easy these days. Can we all just stop invalidating each other's experience and just really listen and empathize with each other? Everyone has their own lenses and unconscious biases, including me, including you, regardless of your gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Okay, that is it for today's video. I would love to hear what interesting insights it sparked for you. We can all do our part to create a more equitable, progressive, and safe world where everyone feels safe to be themselves, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation. So let's work towards that together in the comments below. Share your insights, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Okay, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking this time. I appreciate you. If you're new around here, I post videos every Wednesday about making money, saving money, and investing money, as well as all of the psychological issues around money. So please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. Bye.